He's been called the most dangerous mobster in the world, but he doesn't hide in the shadows. He walks freely in Moscow, untouchable, protected, and richer than some countries. His empire spanned 30 nations, from Wall Street to war zones, and yet no prison cell has ever held him. This is the untold story of Semion Mogilevich, the billion-dollar brain behind the Russian Mafia. They say every criminal underworld has a shadow figure, the one name whispered in fear, the one no one dares to cross. For decades, in the murky depths of the global mafia, that name was Semion Mogilevich. To the public, he was almost invisible. No flashy cars, no gold chains, no gang tattoos, but in the corridors of power, both political and criminal, he was known as the man who could move billions, make governments bend, and make people disappear without a trace. Born in Soviet Ukraine in 1946, Mogilevich came from humble beginnings. Nothing in his early life screamed, future crime lord. But the Soviet Union was a breeding ground for black markets, and the young Semion was quick to learn that in a world where scarcity ruled, the man who controlled supply controlled power. It wasn't guns or street brawls that gave him his start. It was brains. He studied economics at Lviv University, arming himself with knowledge that most gangsters couldn't dream of, and that knowledge would become his most dangerous weapon. By the 1970s, while others were fighting for scraps in the streets, Mogilevich was orchestrating schemes that reached across borders. He began with small-time cons, scams targeting fellow Jews who were allowed to emigrate from the USSR to Israel and the West. He'd promised to sell their possessions for them after they left the country, but instead, he'd sell everything and keep the profits. These weren't random hits. They were carefully calculated plays, executed with precision and zero remorse. The profits piled up, and so did his influence. But Mogilevich wasn't just chasing quick money. He was building something bigger, a network. Every deal, every scam, every handshake in the shadows was a brick in the empire he was quietly constructing. And this empire wasn't confined to one city or even one country. This was global, a web of power that would soon connect New York, Moscow, Budapest, and beyond. And yet, the most chilling thing about Semion Mogilevich wasn't how he started. It was where this quiet, cunning man was about to go. Because what he had planned next would put him on the radar of the FBI, Interpol, and intelligence agencies around the world, and once his name entered their files, it would never leave. While the world watched the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, Mogilevich saw something entirely different, an opportunity. The chaos that followed the USSR's collapse left entire industries unprotected, currencies unstable, and countless ex-KGB agents suddenly unemployed. For a man like Mogilevich, this was the perfect storm. He began buying up businesses in Russia and Eastern Europe, not flashy nightclubs or casinos, but oil companies, arms trading firms, and art dealerships. On the surface, these were legitimate enterprises. Beneath the surface, they were laundering machines and fronts for smuggling operations that spanned continents. In Budapest, Hungary, he established a major base of operations. The city became his control room, a hub from which he could direct operations in dozens of countries without drawing too much attention. Through shell companies and offshore accounts, he moved vast sums of money. And unlike other mob bosses who ruled through intimidation and street violence, Mogilevich operated like a CEO. He recruited accountants, lawyers, and politicians into his orbit, building a criminal conglomerate disguised as a global business empire. The reach of this network was staggering. Arms deals in Eastern Europe, drug trafficking routes through Central Asia, fraudulent oil trades in the West, and even suspected influence over elections. It wasn't just crime. It was systemic corruption on a global scale. And yet, despite the billions flowing through his hands, Mogilevich remained a ghost. No social media, no interviews, no public appearances. Just whispers, documents in secret police archives, and his name occasionally surfacing in intelligence reports that most civilians would never see. In the underworld, the most dangerous criminals are not the ones making the headlines. They're the ones you've never heard of. Mogilevich mastered the art of being invisible. He avoided violence in public view, preferring legal loopholes, fake identities, and bribes to keep his operations running. He surrounded himself with layers of protection, both human and political. Anyone who tried to investigate him quickly found themselves blocked by bureaucratic walls or legal confusion. In some countries, he was seen as untouchable, thanks to alleged connections with top political figures in Russia and Eastern Europe. Rumors swirled about his involvement in everything from human trafficking to illegal arms shipments. Some intelligence sources claimed he had dealings with terrorist organizations, selling them weapons in exchange for hard currency. Others pointed to massive stock fraud schemes in the West, where he allegedly drained hundreds of millions from investors without ever stepping foot in the countries he targeted. And yet, no matter how many agencies were after him, the FBI, Interpol, Scotland Yard, Mogilevich always seemed one step ahead. Like a chess master, he anticipated every move before it happened. One of Mogilevich's most infamous schemes unfolded in the 1990s through a Canadian company called YBM Magnex International. To the public, it was a legitimate manufacturer of industrial magnets. To Mogilevich, it was a goldmine for money laundering. Through stock manipulation, fraudulent accounting, and inflated valuations, YBM Magnex brought in hundreds of millions from investors, all of it routed through offshore accounts and into Mogilevich's empire. By the time authorities caught on, the money was gone, leaving investors empty-handed. The FBI would later call this scam one of the most sophisticated fraud operations they had ever seen. It wasn't run by street thugs or even traditional mobsters. It was run by businessmen in suits answering to a man who rarely appeared in public but controlled everything from the shadows. This was Mogilevich's genius. He could operate inside legitimate systems, twisting them to his advantage so skillfully that by the time anyone realized it was criminal, it was already over. By the early 2000s, Mogilevich's name had become infamous among international law enforcement. The FBI placed him on their 10 most wanted list in 2009, describing him as a man involved in multinational criminal enterprises worth billions. His face was plastered across news outlets for the first time, and for a moment, it seemed like the walls were closing in. In 2008, Russian authorities arrested him on charges of tax evasion, but it didn't last. Many believed the arrest was merely symbolic, a way to appease international pressure. Within a year, he was released, and despite the FBI's open warrants, he remained untouchable inside Russia. The reason? Many believe Mogilevich enjoyed protection from powerful figures in Moscow, making any attempt to extradite him politically impossible. To this day, he walks free in Russia, living quietly but still feared as the man who once rewired the global underworld. Semion Mogilevich's story is unlike that of any other mob boss. He didn't just rule a city or a country. He operated on a scale so vast that even now, experts believe parts of his network may still be active. His methods, using legitimate businesses as criminal engines, embedding himself within political systems, have inspired a new generation of organized crime leaders. For law enforcement, Mogilevich represents the ultimate challenge. How do you catch a man who breaks the law from inside the law? And for the world, his story is a chilling reminder that the most dangerous criminals are not always the ones we see in the headlines. Sometimes, they're the ones we never see at all.
The case may be closed, but criminology never sleeps. Like and subscribe at Join Criminology, and step deeper into the dark with us.